All right, today's agenda is to mix up some soil so that I can pot plants up in the greenhouse. So I've got this mix stuff that a friend brought by. It comes from one of the commercial potting soil makers, and it's their fall off. It's the stuff that hits the floor that they can't put in the bags and just when they need to clean up and sweep up. So it's got little bits of trash, it's got some chunks of wood, it's got big chunks of their organic material, compost in it, and I need to get it screened down. And then this batch doesn't have as much of the pumice in it as some will. It's wherever it is in the pile when you go to get it, but the price is right for free. So I've got a plastic tote that I've cut up so that I can screen into, and this contains my potting mix as I mix it, and it works pretty well to screen into. And I need to get a tarp built for it so that it doesn't get poured down rain in times. I'll get the camera set up here and kind of run through the process. I'll get a scoop of that stuff and throw it up on here. This little frame is the cutoff of the bottom of a bee box, and it works pretty good to just slide across on this piece of expanded metal. Then these bigger chunks, that's the compost that's come in here, and I want that in the mix. I just don't want it in there in big chunk form, so I can kind of break it up, slide her back and forth. There's rocks in there I want to get out. And that scoop wasn't too bad. And I don't want big sticks like that in there. It ends up in your 4-inch pot you try to put the plant in, and there isn't room. It's just a pain. So, and I have screened most of the potting soil that I have brought into this place, unless it's in a bag form, but any of the bulk stuff usually needs some sort of screening. Then I've got a big bag of perlite. I'll run it through there. A couple of scoops every 4, 5, 6 scoops of the peat moss stuff, and then it's layered in there. But I can come in with my shovel and I scoop it up and toss it against the back wall, and it gets a pretty good mix. And then I can look at it, see, do I want to add a little more of one or the other. Sometimes I'll put some fir bark in with it too, but a lot of times I'll just leave it at this, and then if I need to change it as I'm potting up different types of plants, I can mix little batches of it by hand to get it a little drier or a little wetter. There's times that I'll add more of my own compost to it also. There's just, you know, endless ways you can mix and make potting soil. Right now I just need to get something to put in the plants. So, and even with the organic matter in there from the compost, there's not a lot of nutrients in these. If you've got them potted up, you're gonna have to feed them if they're in there very long. It's just what you're gonna have to do to have good healthy plants. So once I get enough mixed in there and stirred up good, then I bring my flats in with my pots. Just scoop it right up so I don't have to worry about any spillage. Not making a mess and having to clean it up. It's all right inside my bin here. And I tend to just fill them right to the top. And then it'll settle some as you plant and water it. It'll settle down, but it won't settle too far. So that's how I get them filled. And now we'll head into the greenhouse, which could use to be cleaner. So I have some wine barrels that I've cut in half and trying to get some spar varnish on so they'll last a little longer and cleaned up, and I like to route the tops of them and make them a little nicer. Susan needed to replace some of hers, and I'll probably try to sell some too. Here's where the rabbits were hanging, so they've fertilized right on the ground and it'll get worked in. I'll be getting peas planted along that edge of the greenhouse here real soon so we can eat in here. We've got Swiss chard left over from last year, little buggy, but there's some new shoots that we can still glean and eat. It'll come out soon because new ones will be coming. And these are overwintered beets, which we normally overwinter beets here in the greenhouse for the reason that they're the first thing to come up with new growth. So you've got wonderful beet greens for salads or eating, and normally not enough to cook down because that takes a lot, but it'll go into salads really nicely. These I transplanted in the middle of the winter from out in the garden in here, and they're doing okay. So we also put carrots in the greenhouse for the winter because we're too wet outside here in the Willamette Valley. With the ground that I've got, the carrots just rot and the bugs get them. But in here you can control the amount of moisture that they have, and they can last, and you can come in and get them all winter long. So it's pretty nice. The greenhouse is really a treat. So at this end I've got benches. I have built-in benches on both sides, and then I've got some that I hang down the middle as we get lots of plants coming. So right down here I've got the seed beds where we're seeding stuff, and they're on heat mats. Helps them get started and grow. And I built these wire cages to go over the top of them because we're starting things early in here, and the little brown birds and the mice get in here and they want to eat all of this new fresh greens coming up, and they can destroy your seed bed really quick. So these things work pretty well. And then later in the year Susan actually takes some of those outside when she plants transplants out, because the starlings will come and just decimate your seedlings, pull them all up, especially her little corn, which yes, she germinates corn in the greenhouse and plants it out, and then the starlings come eat it all. So anyway, all right, well, I'll get this set up on the bench. So here we've got my little seed flat. Peas, these are the second time I planted those up here. And the cauliflower through here, which is behind us because it is the second planting too. It didn't take the first time. Here I have a couple varieties of lettuce and some broccoli that is way past needing to get planted up. And the flats that we filled earlier out front. And when I set up to seed most of my stuff, I like to have a bit of pumice or perlite on the very bottom, and then I put a seed mix on the top to seed into. And what it does, allows the roots to really get deep in there, and it makes it easier to get them apart when they get a little overgrown, so I can come through and separate them and get ready to pot them up. So I usually just scatter a handful of them on the seed bed to start them. Sometimes they end up a little too tight, or you end up with way too many, but then I can just shake them as I'm pulling on them to get them apart. And if I lose one or two, I lose one or two. If I get a spot where one of them breaks off and doesn't make it, I plant enough that it doesn't matter. I always have way too many extras. I like to get a bunch of them separated out and ready so that I can just rock through here and plant them. And I used to have a nice dibble. Now I just use my knife, stick a hole down in there, nice fluffy stuff, and pack them right in. Then when I water, it'll water it in and push out any of the air, and away they'll go. And I always have some extras. If a few of the transplants don't make it, and I'll finish filling in the flats with them, as that bench space ends up at a premium by the end of the season. And you don't want your flats that aren't full. You're spending time watering them, taking care of them, moving them. They need to be full. And different if you're doing a little hobby stuff, but we grow quite a few, and I'm going to try to sell some this year. Just have some extra vegetable starts for sale as people come through the farm looking for bunnies or bees. All right, we'll make you watch me do it all. So I've gotten that overgrown stuff potted up, and now I've got some cauliflower that is just germinated. This is when I like to transplant them. They don't even have true leaves up yet. These are the cotyledons that are the first leaf to come up when they germinate, and here's a true leaf coming up behind it. So they're very, very young. They're tougher at this age to a point for a small plant. They also have very little root mass. It's easy to get them up out of the seed mix, and it's easy to get them separated, and then it's easy to get them to drop straight down into the pot. So this is the stage that I like to do the transplant when I can, but as you just witnessed, sometimes they get ahead of me. But these little guys will take quite a bit of abuse. They'll also break off pretty easy if you pull them sideways. And I'll go through and pull out the healthier ones and plant them first. If I have extra space in the end of the flats, I'll put some of the little guys in to finish them. But I normally overseed so heavily in my seed bed that I've got way more than I'm ever going to need. So try not to worry about planting every one of them. So that's how I prefer to do potting seedlings up. Yeah, the darn cat likes the greenhouse during the day too. She does go out and hunt at night, but sleeps on the bench all day in the greenhouse. Huh, cat? Silly cat. So I've potted up all I'm going to pot up for today. Got more to do, but I'll try to get out here in the morning to do it. It's warming up in here now. So I planted some of the lettuces in this raised bed. You can see they're wilted a little. That's transplant shock. They've been pulled apart, separated. and they'll pull right out of that. So this bed had a rabbit cage on top of it 2 days ago. So it's got a month's worth of fresh rabbit manure right there, worked right in. So I had some peas that I germinated on the bench because the rabbits were in the way, and I got them seeded over here along the wall. When they get up a little taller, I'll put something for them to climb on. We could be planting some outside now, but haven't done that yet. And the problem that I have with that is they get in the way of tilling stuff, because they're not done when I'm ready to till the rest of the garden. So here are the flats that I've seeded up or potted up today from the seed flats, and you can see some of them have a little bit of shock too. So when I come in here to water them, I want to turn the water pressure way down, because I don't want to blast them too hard. Larger ones will take it, but these smaller ones that I just did of the cauliflower, you can break them off with too much water till they get set and established. And so I want to slow down the sprinkling, get the soil to start settling in, because it has never had the water run through it where it is now. So there's a lot of air. I want to run water down through there and tighten the fibers and push out a lot of the air. I buy trays that don't have holes in them, and I found that it works best for me in the greenhouse, especially when you got the bigger plants. They need all that extra water reserve when it's hot, but you have to watch them and be careful when you've got these little guys in there that aren't sucking that much water, and you just have to feel them, lift them up. If they're getting a little heavy and there's too much water, just pour it out so that you're not drowning them, because you can get too much. But again, if you don't have that water reserve, once they start getting large, you get a warm day and you come in and everything's stressed. And if you stress a lot of these vegetable plants, at that point they never recover. They'll start to bolt. Some of them will bolt when they're really, really little, and it's just done. You'll have broccoli heads the size of your thumbnail. So here's my seed flats, and there's what is left from the one that I worked on. So I want to leave those there and water them so that they'll stay alive. That way I can replace any that die from the transplants. And here's a flat I'll work on tomorrow. Got some spinach and a little bit of basils up, and some cabbage. So I'll work on those tomorrow. Susan's got some petunia starts here, I believe. Little bitty guys. They're a little tough to get started, but they're up. This is some strawberry runners that I dug up earlier this winter and got them in here, and some of them even have blooms on them already. So a good friend of mine needs to replace some of his, so he'll take a flat of these. I think there's 50 in a flat, and maybe I'll try to sell a few, but we're gonna have strawberries on them before long.